Hello and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. On today's episode, we're going to be creating this flower image right here. We're going to take it from camera raw and work it the whole way through. We're going to be using Photoshop and some Topaz products. I'll show you every step along the way, and hopefully you'll pick up some new tips, tricks, and ideas for your images. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, today let's work on a flower image. I have this image right here. I really love this flower. I like the way the light was hitting it. This is straight out of camera raw, shot in a Canon 5D, ISO 640, 210 millimeter lens, and shot at f5.6 with a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second. The first thing I want to do is maybe crop this image. I don't like this leaf down here, but let's give it a crop. So in this image, I don't think we need all of this space above the flower here. So I'm thinking maybe a 4x5 crop, so we can do maybe an 8x10 or 16x20 on this if we wanted to print it. So let's come over here and click the lock here on the crop. Click on the drop-down menu, go to 4x5, 8x10, and yeah, that looks pretty good. I like to shut my lights out, so if you type the L key twice, you'll put the lights out. Hover over the edge of the image here, so you see the little curved little icon with the two arrows on it, and then we could check to make sure our image is nice and straight for us. I'm looking at this area right up in here. Want that relatively straight. Maybe it was pretty good actually, but maybe right about there looks pretty good. But putting the lights out lets you see the image without much distraction here. And then we can just move it around in the frame, see how we want it to be. And that looks pretty good right there. I'm going to type my L key again to turn the lights back on. Okay. And then just click done right down here when you like the crop. And there is the image cropped. Let's start off by looking at lens profiles, or not lens profiles, but profiles here. So let's click on this icon right here. And let's check. I always check these out like Adobe Color. Usually looks pretty good. Here's Adobe Vivid. Landscape, yeah, Faithful. Won't have much color in it. Not seeing a whole lot of difference with these, but the Vivid gives me a little bit more color. Especially like up in this part of the flower right up in here in this, I guess it's a spent bloom here. So I like that, and I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to accept that. I'm just going to click on Close. And let's see here. Let me go down to the detail. And I just use the standard default sharpening of 25. I'm going to leave the noise reduction off. I'm going to go to Lens Corrections and make sure I have Remove Chromatic Aberration selected. Enable Profile Corrections. Let's click that. It'll find your lens. And so that'll get everything set up there for the lens. And let's come back up here to basic. And let's just work with this here. Let's check our temperature out here. And I like the blueness in the flower, but I want to keep that background warm as well. So it's pretty close. I usually shoot with auto white balance and it works out pretty well for me. So tint I think looks good. I don't want it to be magenta-y in there. So maybe something like that looks pretty good. All right, now on to exposure. And look at your histogram up here too as you're doing these things. Here's a little trick. If you hold the shift key down and double click whites, you can set the white point. Shift double click the blacks, you can set the black point. And then I never really accept it there, so I'm going to pull the whites back a little bit because it's getting a little bit hot up in there. And the blacks are a little too black for me, so I'm just going to open that up a little bit. But it's a good way to start out. It's a good starting point, and then you can play with your shadows if you need to open those up a little bit. I don't know, maybe right about there. And let's check our highlights. And I'm looking mainly at this area right here. I don't want to blow any of that out. So let's see here. I might just pull that back just a little bit. And now maybe look at my exposure and slightly increase that a little bit. Just a little bit there. Actually, I decreased it. There's plus 0.05, just a really minor exposure bump. Let me go back and check the highlight out here a little bit, because I don't want to blow out that highlight there. I think that looks pretty good. My histogram is looking pretty nice, and I think that's a good starting point. And let's zoom into this image. I'm zooming in at 2:1 here. So again, this was shot at ISO 640, so relatively low. There's a little bit of noise in there, but we'll take care of that inside of Photoshop. I'll use Topaz denoise AI on that. All right. So let's go ahead and right click the image and edit in Adobe Photoshop 2020. That'll launch Photoshop 2020, and then we can go from there. So here we go. The first thing I want to do in Photoshop is duplicate my background layer. That's Command or Control J. So we can work non-destructively. I'm going to come over to Filter, Topaz Labs, and find Denoise AI. And let's just give this guy a denoise. Get rid of any noise in there. I love Denoise AI. It does a beautiful job for getting rid of noise. And this is on the auto setting. It comes in automatically adjusting it. And if I click the original here, you can see the before, see the noise in here, and here's the after. Before and after. I might just bump that up a little bit. It's not taking much noise out. I'm just going to bump it up a little bit and see. Right there, that looks nice. There's no noise in there, and it looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. So it's pretty simple, and I'll just click apply, and we'll come right back into Photoshop. Takes a few seconds for it to render out here because it is working with artificial intelligence, and that takes a bit of time, but to me it's really worth that extra time to get something that does a beautiful job of noise reduction. And I can't say enough about Denoise AI. And AI Clear inside of Topaz Studio 2 is really a great option as well. All right, so here we are back in Photoshop. At this stage, what I like to do is zoom into my image and really study my flower and see if there's anything that I really want to get rid of on the flower. Because, you know, you want your flower to look as good as it possibly can. If there's any issues, let's get rid of them. Like here's a little bug on here. I don't think it's really adding to the image here. This little piece of flower here, it's okay. I might get rid of that. Here's another little bug and some little bits of pollen or whatever on the flower. So what I like to do is get a blank layer. So come down here in the right hand lower corner and click on add a new layer. Get a healing brush. Your shortcut key for that is J. Make sure you have sample all layers set, and let's just start removing some of this distraction, like this little, I don't know what you'd call this thing, an aphid, maybe. But I'll tell you, the healing tool does a great job. And sometimes I'll just go over it a couple times just to fix it up. Here's a few little dills in here. Let's just get rid of it. Let's make our flower look really nice. Hey, as Bob Ross used to say, it's your world. You can do with it what you want. And I say, I don't want these little distractions in my world. Look how that healing tool works. It's fantastic. These Photoshop healing tools are amazing, amazing, amazing. They just make your life so much easier. Let's see if I can get rid of this guy right here if I just paint over this thing here. Let's see what kind of a job it'll do. Yeah, pretty nice. Hit it a couple times right there. Yeah, really good. Sometimes you just want to go over it a couple times and it'll usually work itself out. See this little mark right here? I don't think I want it. It's gone. This little mark, it's gone. So really just look over your image really well, especially if you're doing a flower. You know, let's make it look pretty. Let's zoom back out. The next step will be to merge layer 2 down to layer 1. So if you right click it and just click on merge down, that'll pull those two layers together. And I'm going to duplicate this layer, Command J or Control J on a PC. And then let's take this into Adobe Camera Raw and work on this flower. So I'm thinking in Camera Raw, what we'll do is bring up some of the blues on here. So I think it could use a little more saturation on blues. So let's come up to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. And let's go to the, where is it here? HSL Adjustments. And let's go to our blues here and let's just pull. Oh, I'm unlumined. Sorry about that. Let's go to Saturation. All right, blues. Yeah, let's just pull up our blues a little bit here. pull up the blues a little bit. Let's play with the luminance here. Let's see, do we want to darken the blues? Maybe. Or lighten them up a little bit. Maybe just lighten them up just slightly. So I think that looks pretty good. And then just click on OK, and that'll bring us right back into Photoshop. So layer 1 copy. Here's the before and there's the after. Just throwing a little bit more blue up in there. I think that looks pretty nice. The next thing I'd like to do, I think, is brighten up these stamen right in here. Would look nice, I think, if they were a little bit brighter, draw some attention to them. So what I'm going to do next is come up to select, and let's come down to color range. This is a good way to find something. I've already done this before, but if you just click on any color, like if I clicked on blue here, it's going to select blue tones. But I'm going to click on one of these stamen right here, and it selects the stamen. Then you can adjust this fuzziness to make it pick up more or less. I might want to bring up some of these thorns in here. So I might just bring this up a little bit here. I think it's going to go a little nutty around this section up in here, so I'm probably going to get rid of it on that. Okay, and I'll show you how to do that, which is really cool. But maybe right around there, click OK, and that'll put a selection around everything. Now the next step is to come down and get an adjustment layer. I'm going to get a curves adjustment layer here. Now we could do this in a couple different ways. We can either change the blend mode to, say, maybe screen to brighten those up, and that does a really nice job brightening that stuff up. Or I could just leave it normal and just come to the curve and pull up on the curve. We could do it that way too. And let me just drag this point off. I'm going to go back to, I think I like screen. So let's go to screen. And it's a little too strong, so I'm just going to take this opacity and pull it off and then just build it up slowly. Maybe somewhere around in there. Looks pretty good, I think. 66%. Let's click the eyeball on and off. And it lights up these little thorns here too, which is nice. I'm not real happy with this back in here. Let me just look at it one more time. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of it up on here. Let me show you a little trick here. If you right click on this curves layer here, and then come here where it says group from layers and give that a click, that'll put this in a group. Now you can name that group if you want, and I recommend that you do it. For sake of time, I'm not. I'm just going to click OK. And then what you need to do is put a layer mask on here. So come down to the layer mask icon and put a layer mask on there. This is called masking the mask, by the way. And what we can do is we can paint on this mask and it'll affect the mask underneath it. So right here, I want to get rid of this. So all I need to do is make sure I'm using a brush. So type B for the brush key. Make sure you're on a black paint here. If you're not, when you're selected to a mask, it'll give you white and black paint. If it's not on black, just hit the X key and you'll swap these two colors out. Okay. So I'm on black paint. I'm just going to paint over this. I have opacity at 100% and flow at 100%, so I can just paint that right off of there. So that's a nice little tip and trick. So let's look at the before and the after. And I think that's a nice addition to our flower. The next thing I want to do is pull this all together, so that Shift, Option, Command, or Control E to pull that all together, stamps it onto its own new layer here. And let's go up into Filter and Topaz Studio 2. We're going to do a little bit of work in Topaz Studio 2. And Topaz Studio 2 generally launches pretty quick, so give it a second or two here. And here we are in Topaz Studio 2. I want to bring some detail out in the center portion of this flower right here just to draw attention to it. So I'm going to add a filter, and I'm going to get one of my favorites, Precision Contrast. And I'm going to take the micro contrast. Now I'm mainly just looking here. I'm not caring about what happens anywhere else in the image, but right in here, because I'm going to mask this in Photoshop. So I'm going to get the micro and start to pull that up, bring some details out in here. And I like what's happening in here. Really nice. Because I shot this at a very shallow depth of field, f5.6 with a long lens. And so I want a lot of nice bokeh, but I want some sharpness in here. So I'm using Precision Contrast to do this for me, and the micro contrast is really helping. Let's bring up the low contrast a little bit, maybe just a little bit there. I don't think I'll touch the medium or the high. And again, I don't care what's happening on the rest of the image. I'm just going to click on the canvas here and see there's the before and there's the after, which looks kind of nice. And I like that. And let me see if I want to bring up the midtones a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. Just to bring up some of the midtones in here. Let's click on the canvas before and after. Yeah, I like that. And maybe let's look at the saturation. Yeah, maybe just a little bit of saturation in there. Like what's happening here. Let's look at the color contrast here. Got to be careful on this one, but it brings up all those colors in there. Let's see, that might be too much. I might just bump that up just a little bit. Just the tiniest little bit. Like 0.03. Something like that. So click on the canvas before and after. That looks good. I'm just going to click accept. And we're going to go right back into Photoshop. I'm going to put a black layer mask on here. So option. And hold the option key down and click on the layer mask, and that'll put a black layer mask on it. Now we can paint the adjustment in. Make sure you have white paint selected. Right now I have black paint selected, so let me just type the X key, and that switches us to white. And let's see, opacity. I think I could be safe to paint it in 100%, but let's put it on at 50%. So every time you paint, you'll put 50% down. So let's just paint on this section right in here. Okay, and we'll just, that's going to bring up some color. It's going to bring up some detail in here, and I might just paint out around in here a little bit. Maybe over here, maybe a little bit under here. Something like so. Let me hit it another time. Like I said, I could have went to 100%, but it's best to start out slow and just build it up. Something like around there. Let's click on the eyeball here. Here's the before. And here's the after. Let me go ahead and zoom in so you can really see it here. Okay, so here's the before. There's the before, and there's the after. Okay, so it brought up a little bit of detail, and it brought up some, gave us some extra color in here, and I think that looks really nice. So I'm really happy with that. And I think the last thing we need to do is add a vignette to this, and we'll be done. I think I'll just use my Tony Kuiper action because it's a lot quicker to make a vignette. So I'm going to get a lasso tool. So I'm going to type L to get the lasso tool. I'm just going to draw a loose selection around here. I like to do vignettes this way. It's very organic, okay? And then I'm going to click on my TK action right here and find freehand vignette. And it lets me set up a radius for the Gaussian blur. And I usually accepted it, what it comes with. You can change it if you want to, but I think that's good. I'm going to click OK. And what it does here, and you can do this easily yourself, is just get yourself a curves adjustment layer, put it in multiply blend mode, and draw your mask and do it manually. But it's just so much quicker with the action. All right, so it defaults at 50%, so let's click the eyeball and see here's the before and there's the after. And I think for this image, 50% looks good. If you needed more, you could adjust it, the opacity to the right and make it darker. In fact, I might just do that. It adds some mystery to this image, so let me just do that. Bring it a little bit darker. And if you want to make it lighter, you could just pull the opacity back. And I think that looks pretty good. After studying this image for a little bit, I thought these lights in here are a little bit too light over in here and here. I'd just like to tone these down a little bit. I'm going to introduce you to the Tony Kuiper Luminosity Masks panel, okay? This is not a tutorial on it. I just want you to tweak your interest on it. If you're interested in me doing some tutorials on it, please let me know in the comments below. But I'm going to come up here. See right here where it says Lights? This is the Tony Kuiper Luminosity Mask panel, the Rapid Mask panel, TK7. Lights, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then darks, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are your light tones right here. And they get progressively lighter and lighter and lighter as you go down. So watch, I'll click on number 1. That's the main lights of the image. Let's click on 2. Now we're working with lighter lights as we keep coming down. There's 3, 4. But see how you can just target these different areas? And there's no real bright lights in this image. But I think right around 2 hits the areas, the light areas are the areas that my adjustment will affect. But you can see it's not, everything in black is not getting adjusted. but just these light areas right here. And I think that looks good. And I'm just going to come here, see this little hamburger menu here, give it a click. And you can choose any one of these adjustments to make your adjustment with. So I'm going to choose curves, my favorite. And I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool that comes with curves and click over one of these light tones in here, click and drag down. And you notice how it's just targeting those lights. All right, so right around in there, I think looks really beautiful right there. Let's click on the eyeball. There's the before and there's the after. Before and after. So I think that makes it really look beautiful. And if I option click this mask, you can see what the layer mask is doing for me. But it's beautiful. I love the luminosity panel that Tony Kuiper has made. Okay, so there you go. I think we're done. Let's option click the original background. Here's the original image, and here's what we just created. And I think it came out really nice. So there it is, this blue flower. I love this image. In this series of tutorials, I just want to show you my workflow, how I arrive at my finished results. And hopefully you'll learn some tips and tricks along the way. I'm not saying that the way I do things is necessarily the 100% perfect way of doing things, but hopefully you'll learn a thing or two along the way. If you enjoyed this video today, please like and share it with your friends. Also, if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and click the bell notification icon. And every time I put out a new video, you'll be notified about it. Well, thanks again for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I'll see each and every one of you right here next time. Until then, happy editing.